and there's a commander-in-chief. We get into the positions that we get into. I did it because I love my country. I did it because I already served my country one time. I did it because I've got children and grandchildren that I want to make sure have the same kind of opportunities that I had. That's why I did this. I did not do it to get my teeth kicked in every time I come home because somebody doesn't understand why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing it.
People differ.
But what I'm trying to tell you is that we get into these positions through a political process. It's dirty. It's miserable. It's expensive. I don't like it. But once we are elected, I have a responsibility to represent 721,000 people, not 20, but 721,000 people.
Most of who are against Obamacare.
Yeah, most Americans are against Obamacare, you're right. But governance, when you're working within the rules of this document, it's not like a checker match where you move only in one direction, one move at a time. It is more like a chess game. I know this may sound a little bit corny, but if you're an old Star Trek fan, you might remember that Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk used to play chess on a three-dimensional chessboard. There was a level here and a level, and they would make a move down here, and then that guy would make a move up there. Governance is a very, very complicated thing to do because this document makes it that way. We talk about, you've heard the term or the phrase, the wheels of government turn slowly. And I don't want you to think for a second that I'm making an excuse for Washington because I'm not. I'm just telling you that there's a system, and it's the best system on the planet. It's not a perfect system, but it's the best system on the planet, and we're trying to preserve it. We're trying to preserve it and strengthen it for future generations. But it is a complicated system, and it requires the function of certain key elements. Right now, one of the key elements of that system is not working. The Senate is not working, and the checks and balances have broken down.
Okay, excuse me, Congressman, but we have some questions that we need to ask. I have come down here to ask a question.
I was at your meeting, you were asking questions, and you came in late, so they asked me to say this stuff.
We're not going to open it up to the audience.
If we have
I'm not
time,
running the meeting.
yeah. If
These
we
guys
have
are,
time.
so.
We've asked for people to send the questions in, they've all sent the questions, and we've recorded those questions, and these guys have the questions up front. So those questions will be asked.
You didn't get my question in.
Well, did you send the
I wasn't
question?
here when you guys did it.
Okay,
But,
well,
but anyhow, when we get through this, then if we have,
Just do what we have here and go forward.
Yeah.
Okay, let's answer.
Don't interrupt everybody's own thought about how
there's a lot to get covered,
Let him answer
we're
those
just trying to get it all
questions,
covered.
And then later you can argue all you want.
This is your time.
Yeah.
I came here to answer your
Yeah, and
questions,
that's
so
what you
far
agreed
away.
to.
Can I
So,
ask you a general question?
Now, general question might get a general answer, and it might take a while.
Well, that's okay. My ready general answer. Sitting outside Washington, watching politics in Washington for the past, since Ronald Reagan, okay, I've noticed, or it seems like I've noticed one pattern emerge all the time. When we have a Republican president, the Democrats make his life miserable every day. When the tables are turned, we play with the rules of, the rules of the chess game, as it were, and we get walked all over. I don't see the fight coming from our side.
You know something? I agree with you that that is the perception, and I agree with you that that is what the American people see. I wish, and here's what I will offer you. Any of you in this room that would like to come to Washington, D.C. and shadow me for a week, I'll take you to the meetings I go to. I'll take you to the hearings I go to. There is nothing that I do that you cannot go with me to do. I've done that for several others, and it's an eye-opening experience. That is not what's happening in Washington. But here's the truth, and it's a bigger problem, and I'm going to tell you that I don't know how to solve this aspect of it. Today, the media
Controls it.
tells the American people what's important. The media tells the American people what to think. The media tells the American people what their version of the truth is. And that's what we dance to. You guys hear it? You call me and raise hell with me over what you see in the media, what's reported in the media. And the media doesn't always tell you the truth. We could sit here from now until midnight and I could give you example after example after example of how that's true. They're entertainers. They're out for ratings. If they don't get the ratings, if you're not watching their TV show or listening to their radio show, they're not going to stay in business. And they don't have a job. It's job survival, job security. The media is liberal. And you're exactly right. Every time there's a Republican president, the media just beats the living daylights out of them. When there's a Democratic president, what we talked about earlier about, and you remember it, when the government shut down, when Clinton shut it down, even though he was the one that shut it down, he convinced the American people that it was Congress's fault because he had the media and the microphone to back that up. And what did it result in? Clinton got reelected for a second term, even though he was the one that caused the disaster when the government shut down. Because he was the one that made the decision.
Obama can't be elected again.
Obama cannot be elected again.
Most of us in this room don't really pay that much attention to the media. We get our news from the internet.
And you think everything on the internet that you hear and see?
No, that's more accurate than the media. It's more accurate than NBC.
Okay, let's move on to illegal immigration reform, and
I'll answer your
that's the
question.
next topic. Wayne?
Okay, this is a topic that's been important to me since at least 2003, and it affects jobs. I mean, there's many millions of unemployed Americans. It involves squandering our tax money for benefits and so on and so forth. And it also is going to destroy our culture by making us a babble of a country. The United States government has a constitutional responsibility to protect our borders. What are you doing to ensure that they are protected?
Absolutely. First of all, I do not support the Senate immigration bill. I will not support the Senate immigration bill. I will not support anything that comes out of the House that doesn't have two tenets. At least two, probably more. But one, border security and enforcement, validated enforcement of that security must come first. We must stop the flow of illegal immigrants before we can address the issue of those that are here. That's number one. Number two, I will not support amnesty under any circumstances.
What about pathway to citizenship?
I don't support a pathway to citizenship either.
Thank you.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this.
The reason I ask is because when I called House Speaker Boehner's office, they told me when I called my senator, do not use the word amnesty, or they would not know what I was talking about.
Well, I wasn't part of the conversation. I don't know who you talked to in the speaker's house, but I can tell you what the speaker said.
It's the same thing.
I can tell you what the speaker said to our Republican conference. He said, if the Senate thinks that we're going to take up their bill, they're wrong. The House has been working for approximately 4 years, even before I was elected to be your voice, on an immigration reform package. We here in Ohio, we don't experience the day-to-day devastation of the immigration issue like some of the border states do. And it's a bad situation down along the border in a lot of places. So border security's got to come first. We should be enforcing the rules that we've got now. And we're not even doing that. And we're not even doing that. So, you're going to see immigration reform actions begin to emerge out of the House, but it will start with border security and validated enforcement. And I'm talking about validated enforcement that doesn't give this president the ability to say, no, I'm not going to enforce that law, or he's not going to be able to pick and choose.
How do you stop it?
How do you stop him? You empower the states. You build it into the border states have the authority to protect their borders. You stop the shenanigans like we had where they sued the state of Arizona over trying to secure their own borders.
10th Amendment.
We can talk 10th Amendment all night long. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned something about it not being just cut and dry and easy. And there are some other things. Many of the GOP's biggest donors favor amnesty. And of course, they have, we feel like, a bigger influence over the elected leaders than we do with the people. Because they want cheap labor. Are you going to vote with the donors or with the American people?
I just told you what I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote, and I'm going to tell you again what I'm going to vote for. I'm going to vote for border security with validated enforcement built in. I'm going to vote I am not going to support amnesty or pathway to citizenship. Okay? Done. But in terms of the donors, I've been there 2.5 years. Maybe I'm the exception. I have not had a single donor, a political action committee, or anybody else come to my office and say, you better vote this way on this bill, or I'm not going to support you, and have that affect my vote. Not one time. Not one time. The ugly part of that political process is the money. I wish that it weren't that way, but it is. Do you know to run a campaign here in eastern and southeastern Ohio in our district that extends from just outside of Youngstown to about an hour outside of Cincinnati? It takes 6.5 hours to drive it from one end to the other. We've been in Jefferson County. We left my house this morning before sunup. We've been here and had numerous meetings. Some of you that Donna back there has been in some of our meetings earlier today. We'll do this. We'll get home about 9, 10 o'clock tonight. That's every day in this district. Do you know how many media markets that I have to buy advertisements in so that I can get my message out as part of that political process? So that you will send me back there on your behalf. There are 8 media markets. Do you know how much it costs to run a television ad for 1 week? Enough times to affect the viewers? $500,000 for 1 week. For 1 week. Do you know how much was spent in this race, in this district, in the 2012 election? Over $10 million. It was the 13th most expensive race in the nation. I raised and spent over $2 million myself. Now, all that said, all I'm telling you is that being able to raise money is a part of the system. I didn't create the system, but if you want me to be your representative, whoever you want to be your representative, we got to do that, or we're not going to be there. I wish it weren't that way, but it is. I don't like that. But I made this pledge to myself, to my family, and I told the speaker this, and he knows where I stand. If I have to hold my nose and vote one way to please a lobbying group or a group of donors because they're in my back pocket, if I have to hold my nose and vote one way to please them while I'm really hoping that the vote goes the other way because that's the right thing to do for the people that I represent, then I'm the wrong person for this job, and I don't have the intestinal fortitude for it. I will never do that. That's not how I operate.
Okay, you've addressed some of the things that you mentioned, for instance, like the Arizona type things of allowing the states to enforce their own laws, but there are immigration laws in effect, and what are you doing to ensure their enforcement? And of course, I think that probably the federal government through the Justice Department and so on and so forth put roadblocks up in enforcing the laws.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. My job is not to enforce the law. That's the executive branch's job to enforce the law. My job as a legislator is to make the law. I don't enforce the law. Through oversight and investigation, however, I sat on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I sat on the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee on Energy and Commerce. We have jurisdiction over certain federal agencies. I can't just reach out, for example, I can't reach out in that oversight and investigation arm and grab the education department, because that's not under the jurisdiction of the Energy and Commerce Committee. So just because I sit on one oversight and investigation subcommittee doesn't mean that I have oversight and investigative authority over the entire federal government. It's only on those agencies that fall within the jurisdiction. But I wish I had the email that the majority leader sent out this week. And it was an affirmation to our members. We're now halfway through our district work period of August. We're going to be coming back in September. We're going to be continuing our oversight and investigative work on this administration, whether it's the IRS, whether it's the NSA, whether it's the Benghazi and the State Department issue, Obamacare. We are going to continue the oversight and investigation to expose to the American people, the board of directors of this country, what this administration is up to. But it is the executive branch's responsibility to enforce the law, and I'll be the first one to acknowledge to you that they have not been doing that.
Just as a note to that, have you seen the movie They Come to America, #2?
They come to
You really should, because, and I can give you a personal anecdote. I came back across the border from Canada, from Niagara Falls, with my wife last year, and we were stopped at the border. I had to hand the passport to the person at the checkpoint. We were coming back into America, and he said, "Why are you coming to America?" And I said, "I live there, I'm a citizen." And he thought that was a smart answer, and he said, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to get out of the car." So they made me get out of the car, they looked in our trunk, they went through our luggage, just, to show that they can, okay? But if you watch the movie, They Come to America, Dennis Michael, I believe his name, the person who filmed the movie, he dressed up in a camouflage outfit. He put black on his face. He had a box that he had like a nuclear symbol on the back of it, in the back of his Jeep, and he drove through the border, and they just said, "Have a good day, sir."
Yeah.
Now, this is the enforcement of our government, and is there anything that you can do to force the Justice Department or the President to actually, as I say, affect the enforcement of the laws?
Well, we will be, and I know you haven't seen it yet, but as the House unveils its immigration reform package later this fall, our oversight and investigative authority will begin to kick in, and you will see us begin to get into that kind of thing. But I will certainly take the example that you gave, and any others, I will take it back to the committees of jurisdiction and make sure that they know about it.
And the last question here, not to relate to the subject, I think you've already addressed that. A lot of us here don't like John Boehner. We don't feel that Why does John Boehner think he or Congress needs to pick up the Senate immigration bill? And let's see, why does John Boehner think he or Congress needs to pick up the Senate immigration bill and change anything?
He doesn't, and we're not going to. There's going to be a House bill, but understand how the system works. You know how the system works. The Senate passes a bill, doesn't mean that we have to address that bill. But this document right here says the House then passes a bill. This document then says that that goes to conference.
Yeah.
Can you just let a bill die?
Yes.
Not in that context, you can't. Not if you want. Do you want the House to address border security and immigration reform? Do you want us to?
We already have laws already.
Yeah, we don't want.
You don't have the kind of laws that need to protect the borders today.
In 2007, I believe President Bush ended up signing a border security,
Build the fence.
build a fence. And that, they had money, I guess money was appropriated for that.
That's a good question. Yeah, good question.
So.
That's
where's
another
that
one
money?
where they have selectively
Yeah.
decided which laws they want to enforce.
Yeah.
It goes back to the administration and the executive office's ability. But do you want us to put validated, verifiable border security in place where the states are empowered to do it and not dependent? If you want us to do that, then the House has to pass a bill. The Senate has passed a bill. I guarantee you the Senate is certainly not going to entertain our bill if we don't go to conference.
Okay. Well, that's, all right, that's what I was talking
You
about.
quoted Ronald Reagan. Yeah. Ronald Reagan said several things. One of the things Ronald Reagan says is that anybody that agrees with me 70% of the time is not my enemy. They're my friend. Because we're never going to agree on everything in this. Husbands and wives don't agree with one another. Just call my wife and ask her. He also said there's no limits to what a person can achieve if they don't care who gets the credit. We need to be all working for the same things, and that's those principles that make America great. And we've got to figure out how to stop fighting amongst ourselves.
I'm still not clear on why you can't just take this bill that's coming from the Senate and say, no. We can, it's not.
No, you can't do that. If we could, but if we send back one from the House, what do you think Harry Reid's going to do? I ask you again, the premise is,
But two can play at that game. I'd rather see it solved completely than to have this go
okay,
to
so what you
committee.
want us to do is stay where we are.
Better than getting into committee and watching the media go to work on this.
Right.
And
Right.
If you stay where we are, what are you doing? You didn't like the term amnesty. I don't either. You don't like the term pathway to citizenship. I don't either. But if we stay where we are, aren't we granting amnesty by default? Because the 11 million illegal immigrants and the flow is still coming across. Is that a real solution?
Do you really think that no matter what comes out of that compromise, out of the conference, do you really think that the Democrats are going to sign on to handing that power over to the states? Do you really think that?
If they don't, then we will keep working it. If they don't, we will keep working it. We're not going to, I'm not going to.
They'll keep working us.
I'm not going to, but you know something? You need to be on my team because you are making my case. The Democrats and the president control the messaging microphone. They tell the American people what to think about this. And they'll do it in that case too, or they will attempt to.
My gig is psychology, okay? And I don't want to go into all that detail, but I know one thing about that. When the media portrays the Democrats as fighting for their constituents, that causes a groundswell, that causes energy, and that causes momentum. By the same token, when we are perceived as not fighting for it, not only do we lose momentum, okay? Not only does it suppress the Republican vote, but anybody who's watching that is not going to jump on the board with a loser.
But what you just said you're forgetting the fact that the media is not going to tell you how we Republicans are fighting for the things that we believe in. You don't see that day in and day out.
Well, that brings me to my next question. What can we do to support efforts to repeal or stop in some form Obamacare and to get this immigration thing on track? The way we want it.
Continue letting your voice be heard. Continue having meetings like this. I would encourage, I will come and meet with you guys anytime that you want to. We have been in session nearly incessantly, constantly, since the beginning of this year. In the previous 112th Congress, it was like we were in session 2 weeks, then back in our districts a week. It hasn't been that way. There have been so many issues, so many scandals, so many things going on. We have been in session almost constantly. But I will be glad to come and meet with you folks and update you on what is going on and get your inputs and your thoughts. But I would encourage you to write letters. Write those letters to me. Write those letters to Senators Portman and Brown. Write those letters to the White House. Make sure that your voice is being heard. That's what you can do. And tell your friends and your neighbors and your families what their civic responsibility is, to be informed and not just blindly go to the polls and vote for somebody because the media tells you that that's who the most popular person is.
Bill,
Other questions?
are letters the best thing to do instead of emails and all this
You
stuff?
can do it either way. I mean, we
Either
live in
way?
a high-tech
They
world.
mean the
If you
same?
send in an email, we get it. And we get, remember, there's 721,000 people in this district. If everyone sends in one email a week, that kind of gives you an idea of what we face.
Bill,
Yeah.
how many letters do you get a week?
I don't have a clue, but it's a bunch. But I'll get you an answer back, but I don't
Well,
know.
that's less important than the point is, a lot of people I know get frustrated writing letters to their congressman because all they get back is a form letter.
Yeah. Well, again, here's the way that process works. Total truth in lending right here. Transparency. A group of people start writing to my office on an issue. They bring those letters to me. I sit down and we talk about that issue. I give my staff my position on that issue and where I stand. I author the letter that you get back. It may look like a form letter, but I can't sit down and write a personal handwritten letter to 721,000 people.
I understand.
That's all I would do. But it's not a form letter. There is nothing that goes out of my office, and I sure hope we don't make mistakes, but I'm sure there's a mistake every now and then. Nothing goes out of my office that I don't approve. And if you get one that you have questions about, I'd like you to bring it to me, because if we make a mistake, I want to be the first one to try to fix it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair
no.
enough.
There is something that everyone in this room can do, and there are some of the people in this room that have done it repetitively, and that is start writing letters to the editor. Write those letters, write open letters to Washington, D.C., and say, this is where I stand, this is where my neighbors stand, and don't bother with 50,000 signatures. Just put your name and your address and phone number. The Herald Star will print it. I guarantee you, if we start flooding that Herald Star, the press will pick it up.